of those that needed to be updated as well. So that's kind of how it started. And then when we started looking through it, we started finding things that we needed to change, and we met, and after several meetings, we've come up with what we feel like is a final draft. So one of the main things we did, again, is make it ADA compliant, and made it more visibly engaging and user-friendly. I know you guys, I sent it out to you a couple days ago, and it looks a lot better. The format of it and everything looks a lot better. It also provides, so the handbook part provides information, any information that parents and students need about the operation of the school system that has to do with them. And so it's kind of a one-stop shop. So in this handbook, they can find board policy, they can find the code of conduct, they can find the data governance policy, the acceptable use agreement, school calendar, campus directory, and much more. So again, the purpose behind it is, again, just a one-stop shop, just where that parents and students can find any information that they need on anything having to do with the school system and their part in the role they play in the school system. This is the example, this is the table of contents. These are some of the things that it covers just about the school system, the rights and responsibilities of both parents and students, our academics and services, admission and attendance, conduct, extracurricular activities, health and wellness, operations, safety, technology and data and information, and then appendix where we have all the forms and all of our compliance statements. So much of this was already part of the code of conduct, but what we felt like is it was a little bit confusing when you look at it, because when you call something a code of conduct, most people think disciplinary. Even though it had all of these other elements as part of it, attendance and these other things, a lot of people didn't read it because they just felt like it dealt with discipline. So we wanted to make sure that it encompassed everything, but that it had a name so parents knew that there was just more information than information about discipline in here. All right. Any questions before I go forward with the code of conduct part? Also, one of the purposes of this is so that each year that we didn't have to keep going back and having all of this information approved, because this is not policy. Although everything in here points back to a board policy, this is more procedural, okay? The code of conduct is part of our policy, so we have to have it approved every year. But the handbook, we shouldn't have to have it approved every year. Just something that we can update and change as needed. Any questions about any of that? All right, so the code of conduct. So again, just working to make it ADA compliant, also making it visibly engaging and user-friendly. We also added a few things like a classroom managed behavior section, and I'll go over that in just a second. We added progressive discipline charts by grade band, and we'll talk about those as well. We added detailed definitions of behaviors, references to associated board policies, federal policies, and state laws. Also added in the new state SIR codes. Every year the state updates their SIR codes, mostly every year. They have since I've been in this role. So each year we have to update those so everything in our code of conduct matches what's in Power School. And then we upgraded the bus code of conduct. So the code of conduct behavior classifications. So before we had just local code behaviors, class 1 minor behaviors, class 1 intermediate behaviors, class 3 major behaviors, and class 4 criminal behaviors. We did add the classroom managed behaviors this time, just to give teachers just a general guidance as to what should be handled in their classroom before it's sent to the administration or an office referral. And it's very general, and it gives an overview, and then it gets really specific as to the number of times, number of offenses and what they should do for each time, and I'll show you that in just a second. So this is
that intermediate should be class 2, correct? Just want to make sure.
Yes, that's a typo. So,
Okay.
And that's one thing we're still fixing too, is those typos. So this is the classroom managed behaviors. Okay, these are some examples, and it just outlines again just minor classroom behaviors that should be handled by the teacher first before it goes to an office referral. And you have these in your handbook, but just minor electronics possession, excessive distractions of other students, horseplay and running, dress code violations, and we're talking about any dress code violations that doesn't require them to leave the classroom and change clothes. Those things like, zip up your jacket or just different things like that are easy to handle in the classroom. And then for grades 5 through 12, because several of them, some fifth grades change classes, not all, but we included fifth grade so that we can get them there on time, making sure that they understand to be prompt and not tardy. And letting the teachers handle, again, up to a certain point. And this is an example of the progressive discipline chart. So this shows just gives teachers a general idea of what they should do from first behavior all the way to the fifth behavior. And the consequence gradually increases for each occurrence. So we've got a first behavior, third behavior, and you see this is all PK-12 when it comes to classroom managed behaviors. Once we get into the higher level behaviors, we break those down by grades. And then also just making sure too, the whole purpose behind this is to provide more equity across the district. So if a student at Acel Green Elementary gets one consequence, then this student over here at, if they go to Madison Crossroads, they're getting the same or close to the same, just providing more equity. And this is just an example of so there are progressive discipline charts for classroom managed behaviors, local code, class 1, class 2, okay? Progressive discipline for class 3 and class 4 is handled at the district level, so that's not in the code of conduct, that's handled here. So, but this is just an example. This is a class 2 chart just to kind of show you how it breaks down. You've got a first behavior for PK-5, what's expected, for 6 through 8, what's expected, and what's expected for 9 through 12. Just again, to provide equity and consistency across the district.
What happens if a teacher keep continuing to have problems in the classroom management? What happens, same kid over and over? Johnny and Jamal are grabbing each other, and they're throwing each other across the room, picking up desks, and they look at you and say, oh, it's just horseplay.
Okay. So again, those are progressive, and so say for instance, so something like that would not be horseplay. That would be something that may classify as a class 1, class 2, or class 3. So it's dependent on, so we're not asking teachers to handle something like throwing a desk across the room is not horseplay, and that's not something we would consider horseplay. That's definitely administrative. So, there are ways to, when we're talking about classroom managed behaviors, we're talking about very minor things, okay? We still have those behaviors, and if it's consistent where they're doing it over and over and over again, there isn't. So we've done this kind of based on a 3 strikes and you're out. So after the third time of minor behaviors, then it becomes an office referral, okay? So we're just talking about minor behaviors, not major, okay? And again, so, we have and that's why we have the local codes. Anything that's local code or above would go to an administrator. When we're talking about classroom managed behaviors, we're just talking about those minor things that should be handled in the classroom.
I think what I'm looking for is the definition of horseplay. Because I've seen kids grab each other and throw each other around, and then they'll look at you and they'll go, hey, I'm just acting. It's horseplay. You can't punish me. And you get with 13, 14, 15-year-old boys, particularly boys, it can go from horseplay to something a little bit more real quick.
And in that case, I would urge the teacher to contact their administrator if they feel like that it's horseplay and it's not. We don't allow kids to make those decisions anyway. To me, that's a teacher administrator decision on whether or not something's horseplay or not. So depending on the circumstances. Any other questions, comments? All right, and again, we just have detailed definitions, which these were already in the Code of Conduct to begin with, but we just kind of went through each one of them, vetted them, made sure they were correct, made sure they made sense for our Class 2 behavior. And this is just an example. This is just Class 2. So this is what it looks like in the new Code of Conduct. Also, what we included, what I was speaking about earlier, if there is a Code of Conduct violation or behavior that is addressed by board policy or addressed by the handbook or addressed by a state law or a federal statute, then we referenced it in the Code of Conduct so that when a parent's looking at that, they can immediately click on that link, because that's a live link, and go back to that board policy where it says, hey, this is what's in board policy. This is what our policy says about this infraction. So just trying to make it more user-friendly, making it easier for parents not to have to go back and forth between, trying to find the board policy on the website, then trying to find the code of conduct. They've got it all in one place. Any questions about any of that before I go into the bus code of conduct? All right, so the bus code of conduct, the purpose behind that is increasing bus safety. Bus infractions are now also broken into 4 classes: Class 1 minor, Class 2 intermediate, Class 3 major, and Class 4 criminal. Okay, and so the purpose of this was just to give our administrators and our bus drivers a little bit more support and leeway when it comes to pulling students off the bus for dangerous behaviors. Before, they had to commit 5 violations in order to be pulled off of a bus. Now, we've got it set to where it comes up sooner. So these are some of the, and I'll show you that in just the progression in just a second. But these are our expectations. And this is just, it's not an all-inclusive list. We tried to make it as general as possible, so it did include everything. But this is just some of the major things that we see. And then these are some of the behaviors: failure to follow appropriate directives. So they're similar to what's in the code of conduct as well.
So prior to, we would just use,
We just had this list of rules, that was it.
that was it,
And
okay.
then we had a list of consequences.
And the consequences were the same as if you were in a school and you did the same activity?
Well, no.
Okay.
So the consequences for buses were different.
Okay.
They were, because it was handled at the, when it comes to state reporting, it's handled as a local code. So because they're not state reported, we have a little bit more flexibility with how we can handle those. And I can explain that to you, that I can show you all that in the old bus code of conduct as well. All right, so again, these are some examples. This is not all, but these are some examples of Class 1 behavior violations. And then these are the actions. So your copy may not have had this updated version yet. We just updated this yesterday because we noticed some discrepancies and some issues with that. I've actually had this vetted by the principals and the assistant principals, and some of the things that they noticed, we went ahead and updated. Like it said, like parent notification. Well, who notifies the parent? Is it the administrator or the bus driver or somebody else? So just clarifying some things for them. Okay, so the first violation, depending on what it is, they could be removed up to 2 days. So used to, like I said, it was 5 instances before you could remove somebody from the bus. All right. And again, it's just a faster increase in progression through the consequences. Questions?
So, so for the Class 2 bus behaviors, if you do one of those, does it immediately jump to how many days off the bus? Is that listed?
So Class 2, yeah, it's in there.
Okay.
These are just samples. It's all in the.
Okay, I see it.
Yeah, this is just a sample of everything. I couldn't go through 200 pages here tonight. But
Yeah, I see it.
yeah.
I missed it. I'm sorry.
So these are just samples. These are just what happens if it's a Class 1. The others, Class 2, Class 3, that's all included in there as well. Now, Class 3 and Class 4, that automatically goes to a school disciplinary issue, and that, again, that's a district level. If somebody commits a Class 3 or Class 4 violation, that's a district level issue.
Ms. Wood, you're doing excellent work here, but I do have a question about the parent guide, and it has to do with the timeliness of assignments being turned in. That's an expectation I had as a classroom teacher, and I was unyielding about that. Mr. Rogers and Mr. Kubik will tell you that the idea of doing your work on time is something that will carry over to any profession.
Absolutely.
And what I look for, what I'm afraid of is that the way most teachers and many schools do provide guidance, in addition to contacting the parents, they usually have what's called a late penalty. And I'd like to have some type of language in there that states that the school board or the Board of Education expects for students to turn their assignments in on time, in a timely manner, to prepare them for the workforce. And if they do not, there may or may not be late penalties.
Okay. there is already language in the expectations part of the handbook that says we expect students to turn in work on time. There's nothing in there about a grade penalty. Because of the research and because of the things that we believe, I guess, as an instructional group, grades is our understanding, and the way we interpret is grades are meant to determine whether or not a student has met an academic standard, not a behavior standard. So if we grade students on behavior, then we're really not, that needs to be something separate. So students need to, I'm 100% on board with students needing to have the right dispositions to be successful in life, not just good academic grades. They need social skills and, work skills, So as far as that, we can do that. And those behaviors, we do handle those, but those are handled through the local code, like failure to follow directives and things like that. But making it part of their grade makes it to where we're saying, grades are supposed to say this kid knows this stuff. And if we just can't really relate behavior, but we can definitely talk about that more. That can be a discussion for everybody.
I don't want to put in the language to pin a principal or teacher not to be able to use their good judgment. Periodically, there's good reasons why work is not done on time. Medical reasons, there'll be other reasons where that's done. And I by and large trust both our teachers and administrators to do it. But what I don't want to have happen is for a math teacher to get 9 weeks of work at the end of last week of school, and someone say, grade it all, no penalty. And that's not fair. That's teaching the exact wrong habits to a student. Punctuality, turning work in on time is something that we should encourage, demand, and we trust that our teachers and administrators look at those individual circumstances and make the correct judgment.
Mr. Byrd, I don't disagree. I guess I make an assumption here that there's an implied that that's happening.
It is.
So what you're saying is that you want it codified, that it,
Well,
at least have it some barriers so that it's structured. Well, that's an expectation.
That's right, and we need to tell parents that that's a possibility. If the grandfather dies 5 times, you're going to get a late penalty. There are honest reasons that occur.
Right.
But parents need to understand that expectation and that tie. And many schools have different forms of doing this. And I don't want to get to the point of micromanaging. I just want to say that we expect for work to be turned in on time, and if not, appropriate penalties will be given as determined by the school and the teacher at that time. Because parents right now, what I read, is not discussed. And I may have missed something, but I don't think so.
Okay.
Anything else?
Anything else for Ms. Witt? Thank you, Ms. Witt. Board members, just review this, comb it over again. If you have any suggestions, comments, feel free to reach out to Ms. Witt, and she will certainly follow up with you. Okay, Mr. Cubic.
Thank you, Ms. Witt. I recommend approval of the MCS's Data Governance Policy and Procedures as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the MCSS Data Governance Policy and Procedure as attached. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the MCS's Acceptable Use Agreement as submitted.
Second.
A motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the MCSS Acceptable Use Agreement as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I recommend approval of the MCSS Career Tech Textbook Adoption List as submitted. Mr. Rogers does have a presentation of the votes, if you would like to see that, sir.
Yes, please.
Please.
It's pretty straightforward. So we looked at, on February 23rd, I believe, we had our textbook committee approved, which consisted of 7 individuals, both within our district and also community representatives. We also had a board member, Mr. Heath Jones, that that was part of the voting block when it came to examining these textbooks and then deciding what direction we wanted to take. The votes, they panned out pretty straightforward. Okay, 71% said adopt the list that was approved by the Alabama State Board of Education. Now again, and I remember we talked about this on February 23rd, that career tech is a little bit different than other subject areas, okay? For example, we discussed with Mr. Roman, with some of the teachers, you know, on that list, there were carpentry textbooks, okay? We don't currently offer carpentry, but in a year or two, we could have that arise. And again, by accepting the entire list, that gives us room for growth. That if we want to add a program that we don't currently have, we're able to do that. So again, we basically, and it broke down the same way, kind of through all. We had architecture, information and technology, and then transportation, distribution, and logistics. And it basically broke down the same way. We basically had 5 of the members who said they want to adopt the Alabama State Board of Education adopted list exactly like it is. Then we had 2 members who said that they would like to adopt the state approved list as well as additional materials, okay? And specifically, they wanted to adopt a list that was submitted by a publisher, Savvis, who we already use for mathematics. Okay, Savvis basically missed the deadline. They didn't turn in their list to the state in time for it to be on the original list, but they've already submitted a letter. I've provided y'all with that letter. They basically said they were willing, or that they're proactive, and they submitted that letter ahead of time, because if we do adopt anything that's not on the original list, we have to provide a letter from that publisher basically explaining why they didn't submit on time, or why they didn't submit it originally. They've been approved by the state. They're ready to ship as soon as we have an approved textbook list. So those 2 people said that they would also like to have the Savvis textbooks along with the option to use the Alabama State Board of Education approved. It's the original, okay? So kind of moving forward, again, all 7 members voted. It's pretty straightforward that we would like to adopt the list just as it was presented by the State Board of Education, okay? Moving forward, what we would do is we'll turn this form into the state, okay? Basically saying our selection. Now, what I would suggest, again, just to kind of give us more options, more coverage, would submit the form on the left to the state of Alabama along with the form on the right with the Savvis letter attached, just so that we not only have access to the original Alabama State Board of Education list that was approved by the state board originally, but also the materials that are there for Savvis. And again, I say that just for the simple fact that, again, 2 of our instructors, of the 3 instructors, 2 of them said we'd like to have access to the Savvis as well in the future, if necessary. You know, instructors change. Again, the course offerings change. You know, just kind of covering all of our bases and saying we're going to adopt everything that the state has approved, and then be able to, again, allow teachers to use their discretion on which textbook from that list they'd like to use, if they do use it. Now, again, in talking to a lot of these career technical teachers, they're using outside resources, and they are not using any of the textbooks on the list currently or really in the past. So again, this is just a kind of an option for us if we choose to ever purchase text from publishers in the state.
Okay. So the recommendation is, I know, Mr. Brooks, you got to run. The recommendation is for the approval of the Madison County School System Career Tech textbook adoption list. Do we need to modify that and say add-ons approved by the state?
I'd like that. I think that would cover all.
Want to make a motion do we want to?
You don't have a motion.
We don't have a motion yet, so I'm gonna let you repeat what you're gonna say with that.
So we'll say submitted and
And add-ons approved by the state,
add-ons.
approved by the State Board of Education.
About ALSDE.
ALSD is fine, yeah.
All right. I recommend approval of the MCSS Career Tech textbook adoption list as submitted and to include any ALSDE stated add-ons. Well, no.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for what Mr. Cubic said. But essentially, the Madison County School System Career Tech textbook adoption and the add-ons approved by the ALSDE. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Brooks, I know you got to run. You want to continue, or
We can make, what do we skip?
we're not there yet?
Financial statement.
We're not there. That's not. Okay, go ahead.
I recommend approval of the February 2023 financial statements and payments of bills as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the February 2023 financial statements and payment of bills as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the bids and bid renewals as submitted.
Second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of bids and bid renewals as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the Hazel Green High School baseball loan request as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of the Hazel Green High School baseball loan request as submitted. Any discussion? I reviewed some documentation the school submitted. It's a really good plan. Baseball program's got it on solid footing, so this won't be any issue with the baseball program. So Dr. Hayden's here if y'all have any questions.
Recommend approval.
All right, all those in favor? Aye.
I recommend approval of the contracts for services as submitted.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of contracts for services as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
I recommend approval of the principal contracts as submitted.
Motion.
Motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of principal contracts as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I recommend approval of the personnel items and the addendum as submitted.
Second.
Motion and a second for the recommendation for approval of personnel items and addendum as submitted. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're adjourned. Thank you all.